Greetings and welcome to the Roll for Crit podcast, the official podcast for rollforcrit.com. Watch, shop, play. I'm Will Keeler.
I'm Jonathan Estes, and this is a special episode. We're mostly going to be talking about PAX Unplugged, which we just attended this weekend. Before we get into that, there was one major piece of news that happened to come out at the exact same time that PAX Unplugged started, although it didn't really have a presence at that show. I think it was just a coincidence. Of course, Board Game Geek Con was going on the same weekend.
Yep.
We can get into all that stuff later, but this piece of news was that they announced a new version of Betrayal at House on the Hill, Betrayal Legacy. And this is going to be an official Legacy game from the creator of the Legacy genre, Rob Daviau, Hasbro, Avalon Hill, all that stuff, based on the game, Legacy content. Stuff you'll be changing throughout. However, one thing that's different in this game from other Legacy games is that when you're finished playing through the campaign, you will actually still be able to keep playing it. At least it's different from some of them. So that's sort of interesting. We've played a lot of Betrayal. We've talked a lot about Betrayal. What was your reaction to this announcement?
While I'm like a hesitant, but I do think it actually could work really well. I could see how maybe because the Legacy, depending on who lives and dies, heritage or lives through and just maybe has trauma or something for going to the house.
Right, that's something else they said, is that you'll actually be playing descendants or ancestors of one family throughout. The actual scenarios will take place years apart from each other, which is interesting.
Right. Also, we talked about it would be maybe nice to have some room set up already out there somehow.
Yeah, Betrayal seems like a good game, a good candidate for this. Usually you spend the first half of every game laying out the tiles, so I'm thinking presumably some of that will carry over from game to game.
And another thing we talked about was because the year gaps and changes and stuff, there could be even though for the base I believe it's 50 scenarios, we're talking regular Betrayal.
Oh yeah, I think so. This one also has 50 haunts included.
Haunts.
Whatever you want to call it.
Well, because of the scenario, you could actually make it so no matter what, only 1 through 10 will appear maybe in the first few, and then so there's more of a chance for you to really experience different haunts that make more sense or something.
Yeah, I wonder how connected things will feel. That's probably something of a challenge for them since they have more haunts than you'll be playing in a campaign, that they want them to feel linked together, but there's still a randomness factor there. Other cool stuff they could do, you could get character upgrades, I'm sure that will happen, even though you might be playing different characters. Tiles might get a new sticker, so maybe, for instance, a room might have another ability that you might want to add on to it at the end of a round, which could really affect future games.
Adding or removing maybe more omen symbols, which means haunts more or less likely to trigger.
Yeah, I've definitely had my criticisms of original Betrayal. It's a game that I've kind of fallen out of love with recently, although I still think it's a pretty great gateway game and a great theme. So I think this seems like something that actually does excite me a lot more than, for instance, the Betrayal at Baldur's Gate that came out recently, which is really just basically a reskin. This sounds like it's really going to bring something inventive and creative. If the Legacy system could make me want to play Risk, then I can only imagine it's going to do great things for Betrayal. So, all right, so that's hopefully coming out, I think, late 2018. So we have a long time to go before we talk about that. Now let's get to the meat of this episode. As we said at the top of the show, we attended PAX Unplugged in Philly, the first ever happening of this event. Pretty exciting stuff. We are going to have a bunch of videos throughout the week, interviews, and a couple of impressions videos and some very cool stuff. But this is just going to be our general thoughts and feelings. Do you want to start with generalities, or do you want to talk about some of the games we played?
Let's go. Let's talk about the convention itself, the general,
Okay.
because this, as we said, this is the first of its kind. So what was it like?
Yeah.
Well, for us, it was definitely it had the same sense of, I feel like, of Gen Con, but it was a little different to me because I felt like there was a bigger emphasis on card games a bit more that I saw. And because it's first, maybe at the same time a bit relaxed, but I'm sure it'll grow up quicker.
Well, it definitely felt more in line with BGG Con than Gen Con. I would say about maybe a little big. It's been a couple years since we went to the BGG Con, but a little bigger than that in terms of just the space, but comparable, pretty comparable. They also had kind of a games library. They also had a bunch of panels there as well. We got a chance to check out one of them, which we can talk about later. But yeah, definitely a relaxed kind of vibe. Seemed like, from what we were hearing from people too, maybe more newcomers to the board game world were attending, experiencing new stuff for the first time.
I was thinking that might be because of the PAX name. Like, most of the conventions that are PAX are very Magic the Gathering or video game related. I think PAX East, West. I mean, there's still board game presence there, but not as much.
Right, you've been to PAX East, I believe.
Yes.
I've never been to a PAX, so you could talk about how the two compare.
Well, obviously, there's a lot more. Like, you see a big. I remember when I went, there's like a big Overwatch center. There was a Monster Hunter cart and stuff. So it'd be interesting if we start seeing stuff like most of the booths are almost like, if you go to Gen Con, I would put more in line with. Totally blanking. Upper Deck. You know how it's almost like it's an event with a bunch of booths.
Yeah, it's a spectacle for sure.
This wasn't like that, but I can see that becoming a bigger thing maybe if this sort of ramps up.
Yeah, it's definitely like, with Fantasy Flight had a booth, of course, but it was just demos. They didn't even have anything for sale. Which I was honestly impressed, for considering this was not only their first PAX Unplugged, but the same exact weekend as Board Game Geek. It was pretty filled out, and it seemed like a lot of the publishers were bringing their A game, and even though their booths were smaller, there were some big designers that chose, or people behind the companies that chose to come here instead of Board Game Geek Con, which I thought, PAX name, like you said, clearly they have a lot of faith in that, and probably they want to get in on the ground floor of something new. But that was cool to see.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going to be really nice is also, this is a board game convention, a major one on the East Coast, which I think is going to be make a lot of people very happy, especially in the tri-state area.
It made us very happy. It was much more convenient. We didn't have to get an airplane or hotel. It was awesome. Yeah, and what do it was on Board Game Geek Con weekend. What do you think that was a good thing or a bad thing? Or kind of both, I think.
It's both.
Going
in the
forward.
sense, well, from what I've heard, I'm not 100% sure, but PAX I think actually moves, Gen Con's never always.
Yeah, I think almost all of them usually move a week or
so. So maybe there'll be more shifting or even planning and stuff.
I don't know if they've announced next year's dates or not. I know it will be one, but I don't know if they have the.
Yeah, I think they were pretty successful. So
because usually they have the dates by the end of this year's convention, so to plan for next year. But yeah, it was kind of. Obviously people can't go to both, which is a bummer, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, there's one at the same time for people who live in this area, one for people who live in this area, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, but it also comes to the problem with, like you said, that they seem to be both places, but we also weren't at Board Game Geek Con. And I know some places were like, we sent some people here and here, and they might not be sure, but overall it is nice, because if both of them get big enough, they might pull from Gen Con, which means everyone doesn't have to feel like they have to say everything at Gen Con, which I know that probably not developer, the companies probably feel that way with Essen. Like maybe there was only Essen, but now that they can say something at Gen Con, which allows them to make both sides have more content, and maybe they don't have to always bring their new stuff there. They can focus on older stuff as well.
A little more breathing room. And not as much competition of, I'm going to get lost in the crowd because there's 900 new announcements this week. And then in regards to the size of the show, like you said, I'm guessing it's going to get bigger. What I want to know is, how big do we think it's going to get or want it to get? My thoughts are, will it become, probably never, I don't think, on the size of Gen Con, because almost nothing's that big. That's like crazy. But do we want to see it approach that level, or is it nice to have it at a more relaxed state?
I personally like a relaxed state, but that's also because I want no people within a 20-foot radius of me. But I do think it's going to grow bigger. I think this is a first start. I think it was a very good start. Saturday sold out completely. I think that as they grow the tournament scene, which I do think PAX will definitely grow a bit more on. There's going to be more people that want to do that kind of stuff, which means they're going to need more room. I don't know how long then they'll be able to stay at in Philadelphia, because I really do like that area, but I mean, it's definitely a smaller place.
There's definitely a little room for them to expand just in that hall. They could add another aisle or 2 or 3 of booths, I think. But yeah, at a certain point, they're going to have to cap it off. Another thing that I really liked about this compared to Gen Con was, I did think, even though we didn't get to see most of them, that the panels that they had were a lot more interesting in general, and they were trying to do some cool things, whereas I feel like we always think most of the panels we see at Gen Con are usually kind of just side things that aren't really a big draw as compared to the show floor where all the demos you want to play are. I really like to see when they try to do interesting panels and get cool people. The one we got to see was about the state of the industry, and they had Tom Vassell from the Dice Tower, president of Renegade Games, president of WizKids was there, and a few other people. And they were talking about Kickstarter and what they thought the biggest trend in gaming was right now. I don't know if that'll be online anywhere. I know somebody recorded it.
Definitely a very interesting idea. Definitely about stuff like how so many new and great games are coming out each year that, and are we going to hit a plateau, and what does that mean for a lot of developers and stuff? Like,
yeah.
Before, like, I think Tom Vassell said, like, you were lucky to get maybe 5 to 10 new interesting games that come out a year. Now that's like every other week.
Yeah, which goes. What's what I always say.
What Jonathan always says. You know his catchphrase from Rope.
What I've said is I do feel like, and it's hard to say because I don't know if you ever really know until without hindsight, but I do feel like this is a golden age of board gaming. I do think we're in a period of it's a huge boom, obviously, and there are so many great games coming out, which is great.
No, and I definitely agree with that. I mean, I definitely think our audience is growing too, but I do think we're gonna hit that plateau of which, like, the number of new players coming in maybe will drop in numbers, not like stop, but because everyone, and the problem is all those people are like, okay, I already have my full board game collection now. And people are going to become more picky then, and
yeah, it's also harder. You know, unlike video games, they take up space, and you can't just buy them forever on Steam and forget about them.
Well, and that's the other interesting thing, which I guess we can talk about a little bit about too, sure. Since it's sort of segueing to something else we saw. Mm-hmm. Is I do think the weird thing is I think it's going to go into like almost like a Silver Age kind of thing, like kicking with the Gold Age, Silver Age, but like it won't be physical, it'll be like VR and stuff. Like, people are going to make game versions on their digital. They'll still be video games, I guess, but they'll play like board games. And with VR headsets being able to almost interact as if we're in the same room, I feel like that's going to become a big thing.
It could be. Who knows? Who knows where the future will take us? We did get to see a VR version of Catan. That's one video we're going to have coming out later. Plus, I did another digital board game called Sumer. So look forward to those impressions. Some of the other games we played that we didn't do a full video on, we'll give you some impressions on. We got to play a couple out of Essen. They sort of had a whole grouping for kind of the hot new stuff from Essen, which we didn't really talk about at all in this show because, you know, we can't go there. It's kind of hard for us. It's far away. So,
a bit of a drive.
What's one of the ones that you really liked that we played that were those new Essen hotnesses that you can remember?
Well, there's the town, which I'm afraid to say because I feel like I'm going to mispronounce horribly.
All right. I thought I'd throw it to you, but maybe it was too much pressure. Azul.
Thank you.
Was one of the first ones we tried. Yeah, tiling. I don't know. We didn't. The game was demoed to us, and we didn't really get the full like flavor background. But
I didn't know. I read the background. So apparently, it's like a Portuguese in the past, like visited an abbey. I think it was like an abbey.
An abbey.
And he saw these beautiful tiles, and to him it was like a big deal, and he wanted it in his palace, and now it's like a big deal of the Portuguese culture, and that's where these art styles come from, this old tile laying.
Okay, because I know in my head, just because it kind of reminded me of patchwork, I was like, I think we're making a quilt.
Well, that's what I sort of thought at first.
But I guess it's more like a mosaic kind of thing. So yeah, it's a tile placement game. You're sort of drafting groups of tiles. Each turn you can take a
The way it works is there's pretty much plates in the center, and each plate has 4 tiles on them. You can choose one plate and take a tile from it. All the rest go in, or take one pattern, from that tile. So if there were 3 blue tiles, you can take all 3. If there are only 1, you can take the 1. The tiles you don't choose get put into the center. You can choose to take from the center and take all the tiles there, which might be good to get a nice big group. But then you lose points if you're the first person to do it. But you will be first next round then.
Yeah, and essentially you have 5 rows next to sort of a grid, and each grid has it's 5 different patterns. 5 of each row has 1 of each color / pattern. Some of them are solid color, some of them have patterns just for decorative purposes.
Unique tiles.
Yeah, and the first row has 1 slot next to it. Second row has 2 slots next to it, and in order to place a tile into that row at the end of the round, you need to have filled all the slots next to it with one of whatever the number is of the same color, either 1 through 5, depending on your board. We'll put a picture up so it's not as confusing as it sounds. And at the end of the round, you get points for placing it in your successfully, and for if it's bordering anything in the row and column that it's in.
So if you place it and it's connected to one, so there's 2 in a column where you placed it, you get 2 points. If you placed it, then that also was in a row of 4, you get an additional 4 points. So it's all about planning, about gathering and placing your tiles correctly connected, in essence, to get the most points. You also get points at the end of the game for certain patterns. So if you got every single one in every red tile in every row, so even if they weren't touching, that gives a lot of points.
Right.
If you made a full columns or rows, that also makes a lot.
Yeah, so there is that bonus end of game thing where you might be able to get the lead even though it doesn't look that way. And you do a little scoring each round so you can kind of see where the people are at. I thought this reminded me of Splendor in how it's pretty simple, pretty good gateway game, but still engaging and fun, and because it has really neat little tiles that are fun to pick up and clack around.
I definitely get that feeling in the sense because they're
not in gameplay, but just in feel.
Well, actually, 2 things I do.
Okay, maybe a little.
You are building sets, but it's always one color. It's not 3 red, 2 green. What's nice though is since you're sort of focusing on your own set, it's not like it's pointless for me to build it because I know you'll get the capture before me. So it doesn't get that feeling. But I mean, early on, you're not going to get this because you're sort of building your thing. You may be like, I could take this tile for this, or I can get this. I might lose a point if I can't use all my tiles. But it's going to force these into the center, and I know you wanted only 2 black tiles, and now you'll have to pick all 6, which means you lose a lot of points.
Right. You can definitely start looking around and thinking, is it worth it to take what I want or what they want just so they don't get it?
Or because if let's say I wanted to put a black tile in that one that requires 2, but I take 3, every one you take over the limit, you get negative points for the round. But it might be like, I might lose some points, but I'm then forcing you to lose more.
Right.
So there's this whole dynamic, which is really fun.
There's a good back and forth, and the game plays very quickly. This is an easy one to recommend. I think, like Splendor, it feels like one of those Spiel des Jahres, maybe.
I'm pretty sure it was near the top of the hot list.
Of course, from Board Game Geek, it was their #1 on the Buzz, Board Game Geek Buzz from Essen. So
right. Another one we did play, which if you follow our Instagram, you saw a picture of, was Meeple Circus.
Yeah, this was a dexterity game. And this was also sort of had a drafting mechanic where at one at a time, each player is choosing tiles that tell you which types of meeples you're going to take. Now, it could be regular looking meeples like you're used to. It could be animal shaped meeples.
Like there was an elephant. There's regular just like objects like a ball. I want to call it a can almost.
Like
block,
a barrel.
A plank.
Yeah, like a 2x4 looking thing.
And then you'll draft another one, which is basic. And each round will actually draft one of them will be basic, one of them will be unique and something weird. So afterwards, you'll have to actually try to stack these and like literally balance them.
Everybody simultaneously, but you have a 2-minute timer.
With a little music, there's an app that goes dun 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 dun.
Exactly. You're arranging them however you want, but there are cards that show patterns, not even arrangements of them. And if you match what's on those cards, you'll get points. So it might show a stack of 2 guys, and if you have that, you get points.
In addition, the basic meeples come in 3 colors. So it's not just making sure your meeples are lined up that way. There's like ones that want to be always on the ground, some in the air, some that earns more points the higher they are. So you want to actually watch carefully and be like, okay, I need to make sure this one is up on this one, not on the bottom and stuff.
Yeah, so it's, again, another really good intro game. If you like dexterity games, this is different from almost any other one I've played.
Yeah, well, because usually the dexterity is flicking and throwing with your hands. This is more balancing, I don't think,
it's reverse Jenga.
Or Junk Art was balancing? So I guess
some of those games probably
like
were.
That. And the fun thing is because usually you're going to get different shapes now because you're drafting meeples. And then you get weird shaped ones that are unique, like there's one that's a camel, one that's a special strongman, he gets more points if he's carrying stuff. And then the final round, this is like supposedly when you actually put on your show. You don't do it all at the same time, it's unique, you each do it one at a time. And you actually draft sort of special conditions. And this is where the party aspect comes in. Like I drafted, for example, some of them could be more fun party where each time I put a meeple, I had to like say introducing the silly list, like. And
You had to use an adjective to describe every piece you played.
Jonathan, however, could not use his dominant hand.
Yeah, I had to do it all with my left hand, which I knew was a bad choice, but I just did it for fun, and I was awful at it. It was not something that I was able
So
to
it has a lot of these really fun, silly aspects. It's this fun party dexterity game that we haven't seen really that much. And the theme was really funny too, just the whole circus thing and the music playing.
It's funny how much it kind of does feel like you're putting on a little circus show, just
a
from
little
bouncing.
flea circus.
Yeah, sort of like that. So that was really great. If that sounds fun to you, that's a fun one to look forward to. Those were the two we got a chance to play that were in the Essence section, but it's not all that we got to demo. We tried out a shorter version of the Thing board game, Infectionate Outpost 31, which we've been talking about for a while, and we also got a copy for ourselves, so we can give our full impressions of a full game later on. But essentially, it's based on the movie The Thing from the 80s. And
If you haven't seen it, see it.
Go check it out. One person at the start of the game will be infected. They're an imitation. And then they're going to, I guess they're not infected technically, they're the original. And they're going to...
Well, I think the original's like, isn't it like under a shit?
We don't need to get into the lore. Sorry I brought it up. Everyone else will be a human. And you're going out on missions very much like the Resistance, I would say, where you're choosing certain teammates.
Exactly.
And then everyone's putting in a card. Unlike Resistance, though, it's not just a pass or fail. You might need a certain item to pass. Every mission will have a different condition.
Well, and that's the interesting thing also. In Resistance, you could just be like, I don't trust you two, so you and you. In this, they'll be like, on this mission, you also need at least one scientist. So you're like, yeah, I have to take you.
Right. Your pieces are actually color-coded, so you'll know, depending on who's playing, you're forced to. That does add a really interesting dynamic to it. And there's more ways for them to mess with it as
right,
well.
and like, we're going to keep saying other hidden Betrayal games. But Battlestar, there are cards, but instead of a bunch of different decks of colors, there's one deck, and it can have items that either add dice rolls, or which may be used for dice, or maybe literally just say, to pass this mission, we need cards that have a value 1 on them. Or there are sabotage cards in there, which will have things like, in order to pass this test, you need to discard 2 cards.
Yeah, so really cool stuff. As someone who loves these social deduction hidden trader games and fan of The Thing, and knowing that this is the license that, a lot of licensed games aren't very good. They could easily mess it up, especially because we already have so many great hidden role games. This really did, I think, scratch a great, unique itch. It added some really cool layers and twists to the genre. And like we said, it felt like Resistance, it felt like Battlestar, but in a very different way.
What was nice is I think it streamlined a lot of them.
Yeah, certainly Battlestar.
There aren't that many decks.
Yeah, it does. It's not nearly as... There's not nearly as much going on.
And what is really fun, I think, what it also does is each round, like if you played Resistance, when you mentioned someone takes the role of the leader, and usually they reveal when it fails. If they say it fails, they might reveal just the card that makes it fail. They don't have to reveal the other cards, like if someone put in another bad card but didn't reveal. So it puts a lot more suspicion in the group.
Yeah. And of course, as you go on, people can be revealed through blood tests potentially. And the final mission is you're trying to go on a helicopter. Everyone wants to get out, but if even one infected guy is on the helicopter, humans lose. So there's this, it's a really great final tense showdown, which is great because I feel like in the Resistance, for example, sometimes you get that, and sometimes the one team just wins early. This, in The Thing, it's guaranteed you're going to have a suspenseful final mission.
No, it was really interesting our last round because they jumped a little bit, so we didn't get the full feeling, as we said. We'll get to it. But when we came down to it, we're like, because the 5 team just passed with flying colors. So the team is like, did the infected sneak and was helping us in that last mission or not? And so both sides are just like, all right, I gotta prove ourselves, and this is the last thing. And in the end, an infected made it on the helicopter. But it was really interesting because we're all down to the wire of looking at how we all went back thinking all right, this person failed that one, but he actually may be forced to fail as a human if you get all sabotage cards.
Right.
But this one passed during these rounds. These guys failed, so there's a lot more. I think people are still in the talks, and it was a lot of fun. And because I said streamlined, also you won't be 3 hours into a game of Battlestar. Not that don't like it. It's just, it can be a long game.
Yeah, so great game. Really great use of the theme for sure. This one is available right now, so you can probably go find a copy if you can locate it. The only other game I think we demoed that we didn't interview someone about was Hive Mind, which is actually an old one, but one that was a lot of fun. If you haven't played it, from Calliope Games, which is a party answer, almost, I guess what they called it, a trivia game where you don't need to know anything. There's a question asked, and everyone writes down a set of answers, and you get a point for each answer that you share with the rest of the group. So if 2 people said it, you get 2 points. If only you said it, you only get 1 point. And that's essentially how it goes. There's multiple rounds until, actually in this game, if you're the lowest points in a round, you get pushed out a little more, and the first person to get pushed out loses, and everyone else wins, which is kind of an unusual mechanic. But this was really fun. We had a lot of fun playing. This was right up our alley.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun because the question cards, there's always a choose, make your own, but it's fun to think of someone like, you have to think like, all right, how can I try to think, which one of these can I ask and answer at least with most of the people? You don't want everyone. Usually you want that one person to get out.
Right.
So you can have a lot of more fun with these questions, like write down 4 colors. So you're thinking like, sure, everyone might do prime, but everyone will get those points. What's that other weird one or something?
Yeah, and it was interesting. We played with people we didn't know, so that adds another kind of dynamic where you're like, okay, what would most people say? Whereas maybe if you're with a group of people you know well, like, well, I know he's gonna say that because that's I know how he thinks.
Right. So I think, like, for example, I know one of the questions that came up, we actually a lot got points for it because while we didn't know each other and what we liked, it had one of the answers I'd say was because it was very topical. So you might be like, okay, if I choose this, I know people are going to write that down because this was in the news recently, except for him because he doesn't listen to radio.
Right, yeah. So Hive Mind, again, old game, but really fun one. That's all that we demoed. Is there any other, anything else that you saw on the floor that you liked, or do you have kind of a favorite highlight of the show, either that we saw in an interview or one of the ones we just talked about that you really liked? For me, I mean, really, Azul was really cool, and the thing was really great. We saw a lot of cool stuff. Catan Vr was really interesting to check out because I love virtual reality. I don't know. What do you think?
I guess to me, I think one of the things I really liked was I felt the main area was actually split 50-50. I mean, it's this gross, it'd probably be more like 75-25. But 50% was just meant to be the library and for miniatures and stuff.
And demos. And,
right.
Yeah.
Which I really liked, and because I do like the idea of being able to go to the library, sit down, play something, looking over there and like, oh, there's a store there, I'll pick this up there. Like, there's a lot more fun. Or if you're at the store, you'd be like, I don't know about this. Library's right over there. I'll go see if I can find a game.
Yeah.
And in particular, placement-wise, because Essen happened and you have the first play at this, you get that first stab at these games.
Yeah, that was great.
I had a lot of fun. I think the location was great. Everyone there was really cool and interesting. One we forgot to mention that we stopped by, said hi to, but we've talked about this game a lot on our show, is the drop mix people.
Right.
And that's one I really do think is a fun, because it's very different, but it does have that board game feeling of cards and deck building.
We got that Transformers promo card.
Oh, we did. I'm so happy. But you still get all the fun of the weird music and mixing, and almost like it has the solo mode that's just relaxing, almost I want to say journey, kind of, like where it's just different from anything you've really had.
Yeah, in general, it was a perfect game for this because, you know, marriage of digital and tabletop, and there was some of that there, and a great game for new people to stop by and check out, which they had many of. We also got to talk to, you know, we saw some people that we know from Tim Fowers. I got to pick up my advanced copy of Hardback, which was exciting.
Apparently there's a big RPG crowd there because Sentinels Multiverse from Greater Than Games, they had their RPG there, and apparently it sold out.
Right, yeah, it's Greater Than Games we talked to. They were saying everything was going really well for them at the show. We also saw, you know, Daily Magic, a bunch of fun people that we like. Everybody seemed to, I feel like, you know, we asked how's the show going for everybody, and for the most part everyone said, yeah, it's great. There was some, like, maybe some people were selling a little better than others. And,
it was definitely rocky because I think it was the first show.
Yeah.
But I think if we have a general idea how this goes, I think PAX Unplugged will be a fantastic addition to the board game con scene.
Yeah, it was definitely worth going to. If you live in the area, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Check it out.
Yeah, and I'm sure as we see it grow, I mean, we'll see a lot of other cool things. Hopefully, things from the other PAX stuff pulled in here. Maybe more like, I don't think we saw some, which is cool, but maybe more like cosplay, especially if they're board game related ones, kind of things, and more areas for people that. And that's why I like that 50-50. Like, if more people who weren't as sure from board games, like they didn't ever hear Gen Con and want to go because it's so hard to get into or something, but they've gone to PAX conventions, could be like, oh, I can sit here and play this game. It's fun. And I've never tried a board game before. Deck building is a fun activity. Then go and literally walk across the room to the stores.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good show. Great first showing, and I wouldn't expect anything less from PAX, who clearly they already knew what they were doing convention-wise. So they had a leg up, and they used that to make this a really fun one.
Yeah, and I just think the board game designers, developers, we just need to find our way into how this will work with the rest of the.
Yeah, in general, it sounded like everyone had a great time. We would love to hear from people watching if you went to PAX. Or if you went to Board Game Geek Con, because we didn't get to go, maybe you're some crazy person who went down to Dallas for a day and then flew up to Philly and went to both conventions.
Can we fly on your private plane with you?
Yeah, let us know how you manage that one. But please leave a comment on our YouTube page right here and let us know what your thoughts are, or if you didn't get to go, or your favorite thing, or anything. We don't care.
Either way, whichever one go, we'd also love to know. Like, give us maybe your top 3 best hits. I'd love to see that in the comments.
Yeah.
3 best things in whichever convention you went to.
We'll settle for 2 if that's all you can think of, but not 1. That's not putting in enough effort. If you don't feel like leaving a comment, you can also catch us on Twitter at @RollForCrit. You can also find this audio version of this podcast on iTunes. We're on Facebook and Instagram. All those links are around us. And as I said, we're gonna have many, many, many more videos coming out this week. Maybe not 3 minis, but a lot.
There are a lot more to come, so you should probably click that subscribe button.
Yeah.
That way you can always be up to date on all our videos.
Just a teaser, we talked to the people from behind Aegis, one of our favorite Kickstarter games. We talked to, got so many people, Bezier Games about their new stuff, Yellow about their new stuff. Level 99.
All right, that's enough teasers. You don't want to give everything away.
Yeah, sorry. I don't want to give them all away. Anyway, definitely check those out.
But until then, you can check out rollforcrit.com, where we put up a lot of these videos, where there's a bunch of great stuff. Awesome store with a lot of new and great deals for the holidays.
Absolutely. It's the #1 place to go. All the kids are saying so. My name is Jonathan Estes.
And my name's Will Keeler. And you've been watching Roll for Crit.